let me explain what happens at the end. At the end, basically, you do a scenario where you're telling the gospel in like a Muslim nation or something, and they catch you, and that's illegal, so they execute you. So they have people show up with like AKs that aren't loaded, obviously, and they're like, "Do you deny Christ?" And then they like, you're like, you say no, and then they kill you.
That's so fucking awesome. Actually.
Damn.
Like,
Well,
that's good life
okay,
lessons.
We were thinking that it would be good to do a kind of testimonial on each of our own individual experiences with faith. I mean, from the Catholic perspective, I would say our personal relationship with Jesus Christ. But we might want to be more loose because this is America and we're all loosey goosey about, you know, in America, it doesn't matter what God thinks. It matters what you think about God, you know. Anyway, so we were thinking that we should do our own testimonials about our own personal experiences. And we were thinking that Mr. Matt Scroggins would go first.
So I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. I live in New Orleans now, but I was born in Birmingham. I was born to I would say, fairly religious family. We went to church literally every Sunday I was growing up. If we got sick, we would possibly stay home for that, but for the most part, I went to church every Sunday. In fact, on my mom's side, her mother, my grandmother, in her funeral, basically, one of the things the pastor talked about was that basically she made a point of regular church attendance, and she only stopped going to church when her health declined, but she would still listen to a sermon on the radio or watch a broadcast, and still stayed fairly involved with her religious community even as her age went on. I went to a Presbyterian religious private school in Birmingham, Alabama. I went there from kindergarten until I graduated high school. So Christianity was like basically surrounded me.
And the church that you went to was Presbyterian too, right?
It was a Presbyterian church. In fact, that church, there was a split. So my understanding now is that there is a PCA and a PCUSA. The PCA, which is the church I was a part of, had a split that went on in the late 70s, early 80s, where they had a debate about whether they were going to let gay members and women in to be pastors. So the PCUSA went with basically like the kind of more liberal, progressive side of things. And my church, the PCA, my pastor there ended up kind of in charge of the conservative split side of it. So that was the church I grew up in. Religious school. So in a lot of ways, it's like, I don't know what everyone else's experiences were like. I remember the debates about whether prayer should be in school throughout the 90s and early 2000s. And I always had prayer in school, so it seemed like a moot point to me. In elementary school, like we would start every day with a prayer. Grew up there. I understood that religion was important, but it's not something like I kind of assumed, okay, it's like I'm a Christian because by default, the environment I grew up in was Christian. So that's kind of like what we're doing. You have this idea of tribal identity. And so that's how I thought about myself, but I didn't take religion seriously until I got into, I guess like my high school years, there were a lot of issues within my family. I say a lot of issues. There were a lot of issues within my family as it related to me and everyone else. I have two younger siblings, a brother and a sister. I'm the oldest, but I was kind of considered the black sheep of the family.
Why is
And
that?
my father did not like me that much. My siblings and my mother would say that we're very similar people. Maybe in terms of temperament, that's accurate. I would say I'm maybe a little bit more high strung than my father. At least now, he's mellowed out a little bit. Maybe back then that wasn't the case. We clashed a lot. He had a bad temper, and he's a CPA, and his family, particularly his mother, who he takes after, is like kind of obsessive compulsive. And so he was kind of a taskmaster in terms of, if something wasn't being done properly by me, he would become very irritated and could express his temper in a very volatile way. But at the same time, I also don't think he was also like kind of setting a good leadership example within the family. And he's a lot better now. But at the time, basically, I did not feel very loved by my family. My father very clearly had a favoritism for my younger brother. My father never played soccer as a kid, but he learned about soccer so that he could coach my brother's soccer team, and he did that for 7 years. So basically, from like, huddle ball until you get to junior high, when you started having kind of like higher level people take over for that. My mother, I think, just associated with my sister more because she was like the only girl in the family of the children. So in a lot of ways, my father also there was a different perspective on parenting, I guess. My mother's father died of alcoholism related issues when she was 13 years old. So she was partially raised with a father, except for the important like high school years and developing through puberty and whatnot.
My mother had that exact same situation.
Yeah. So there was a lot of family strife back then. My parents were basically, other than my grades suffering because I was depressed, were okay with me kind of just isolating myself and playing video games. I don't think they had really good models for raising children. Their parents, which is not to knock their parents. I just think, my grandfather on my mother's side obviously had the alcoholism issues, and then my father, his father, my grandfather, who I did know, what he's told me over the years is that he was a salesman, so he was traveling all the time. He might have been home, one time a week, or he might go weeks where he wasn't there. In fact, that's one of the things that led to my father going and becoming a CPA, is he wanted to be around more for his family. But the thing is, as a CPA, and like a very effective and high-powered one, he made VP at his first firm in the shortest period in which anyone had ever made it. He worked a lot of long hours, so he also wasn't around a whole lot, particularly during tax season. So kind of like the end of Christmas through middle of April. And now, a word from our sponsors. Hi, everybody. Scroggins here with the Humble Ass HAGcast. And I'm here to tell you that you all need the light of God, light of Jesus Christ in your lives, because you can't live a good life without it, and it's necessary for having a good life. Even if you're like me and you're not sure if the whole thing's true or not, I at least have the spice of God in my life. Yeah! And now, back to some fresh, spicy content.
Real quick, before we go, we should probably advance beyond the early days. But what was the dynamic of being a nerd gamer in high school, but also sort of being a Christian? Did you have like a social network through the church? Was that like a part of that?
Well, that's the other thing that's weird about this is that, we're talking about this junior high and high school. The other thing is that football is kind of expected to be the thing that you do in Alabama. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever spent time there, but
you would have been a good fucking O lineman. I bet that.
I made all.
You did play football, right?
Yeah, I made all-state offensive line.
Oh, well, I didn't.
So I was
know.
an anime nerd, video game guy, and then also like kind
Were
of.
you recruited, Scroggins? Did some colleges want you?
I could have gone down that route, but look, the reason I even did the whole thing, I got into it. I stuck with it at a certain point because I just had a lot of anger issues as a result of family
You get
things.
to hit people, yeah.
That was basically what made me stick with it. But so there was an outlet there, but initially I just got into it because we had a football coach show up when we were getting ready to move to junior high and told us boys we were all pussies if we didn't play football. But as like a 12-year-old, it's like, well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do, and so you just end up signing up for it.
Wait, did you not vibe with the jocks social structure then? Is that what happened? I mean, again, I'm not trying to deconstruct too much here.
No, it's okay. No, it's fine. I mean, this is the point of digging into this. Did I vibe with it? Not really. There was a social structure around this, but it's like the other thing you have to think about is it's like this is central Alabama. There's kind of an upper class element to this, and then it's also very religious itself. So when you're like, oh, the jocks, it's like, well, it's the Christian jocks. So you still have that social dynamic of like the athletes, but it's there's a religious overtone to the entire thing. It's not like jock culture in other states.
But like, can I just add there,
Yeah.
like, because I think that's a similar thing in American culture in general, but probably in Alabama, it's more acute. It's not that those jocks are particularly Christian people, right? Or that they're like going out of their way to emulate Jesus. It's more that it's like a cultural Christian thing, right?
Yeah, there's a social identity to it. It's the weird thing to me is looking back on it, and one of the issues I had when I was there, when I became serious about my religious faith at that time, was that it's like you had a lot of people, and they would profess this. It's like this is a part of their identity, but it's like they'd say their prayers and do that, but it's kind of like that's as deep as the understanding would go. You would hear in our culture, in our community, you hear people talking about how it's important to read the Bible, and people would agree with that and whatnot, but they wouldn't actually sit down and read the Bible. They're like, I have other things I want to do, so they didn't take it seriously.
They just weren't very smart. That's what was good.
I wouldn't say that though, because it's like, some of those people like had really good GPAs. They worked really hard. I wouldn't say they're unintelligent. It's that they're not motivated to be serious about it. It's like, okay, we're serious because we're Christians. This is who our tribe is, would be kind of more the way I would describe the culture. But, it's like, they're listening to who the religious leaders are and what they're saying. They're not actually kind of seeking that out themselves. So let me go back to the social alienation. That'll kind of fill in some gaps here, I think. There was a good amount of social alienation. I didn't have a lot of really close friends in my junior high and high school years. I did have a good friend who I think just kind of got sick of being around me and kind of abandoned me. It's kind of like there's an extent to where like my freshman and sophomore year, I am involved in like these kind of religious communities, but I'm depressed. I'm not really motivated internally by a lot of things. I'm being kind of pushed into a lot of things that I don't really care a whole lot about. experiencing a lot of social alienation. And then I became good friends with this guy from another high school who, I mean, also just down the road from me, but he had muscular dystrophy. Anime fan. I was a big anime guy at the time. So we bonded over stuff like that. Gundam had just gotten really big. I kind of got into some of the model kits they did. And then there was like a comic shop nearby that was getting some of the kind of Japanese imports from the series that hadn't reached the United States yet. And we get together, and I mean, he couldn't really operate a lot of stuff, but we would hang out, watch anime, and work on this stuff together and kind of play video games.
That's really awesome, Scroggins, by the way. Like, I mean, like, being in rural Alabama and like seeking out that shit, like, I knew some like hardcore nerds. They were like my friends, like a little like further on the nerd spectrum than me, but like, that's awesome that you met somebody that like obviously had difficulties and like, you know, connected, and you were somebody serving other people from a young age, and that's awesome.
He died at the beginning of the second semester of my junior year, which sent me into a really intense depression. I think partially it's like, you know, when you see something like that in particular, not that I hadn't had people in my like, you know, I had my grandparents, two of them died when I was in high school, but I think it's like, okay, those are grandparents, they're older, but it's like when you see it happen to someone so young, it created something of a crisis moment in my life. And I felt socially alienated even further. And it didn't seem like, I mean, it's in retrospect, you know, with maturity, it's like my parents cared about me, but there was, you know, they had their own issues. And so that creates problems. And I have grace for that. But I didn't feel like they cared about me. And suddenly Christianity with, you know, I understand obviously the elements of sin, but it's like I suddenly started paying a lot of attention to it because, one, I wanted to know that my friend existed and had a better life ahead of him in the afterlife. And then it made me think a lot about Christ's love for humanity, and that he would die and, you know, suffer in hell for some number of days as a propitiation for, you know, God's judgment on people, so that people could be saved and, you know, brought into his kingdom and experience holiness and glory, and, you know, be set free from the bonds of sin. So, you know, the funny thing is that at that point we had, there's a few months of this. So I guess around March, you know, being that it's a religious community, we had some people in my, like other students basically in my class had started doing a, you know, worship thing where they would get together some number of mornings out of the week. I can't remember what days now, but they would basically meet 30 minutes before class would start. They'd sing hymns and stuff like that and praise to God. We'd do prayers together. So there was kind of this mini revival where you had students who were taking this seriously. And it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't school instigated or anything like that. It's people like kind of choosing to do this of their own accord. It was a very loving environment too. It's like everyone was kind of invited. You could show up if you wanted to. And I kind of fell into being around that crowd at that point, which led to me actually kind of starting to read my Bible independently, taking it very serious. That was, you know, part of that too is that the pastor at that church, one of the things he would talk about is that it's, you know, because it's Calvinist and Presbyterian and Reformed theology, this idea was that he's not the person who is standing between you and a relationship with God. The Bible is there so that you can speak to him directly, that you have this direct contact with God. It's not through an institution. You know, that's why he talks about like the Temple Mount being, or not the Temple Mount, but the Holy of Holies, the curtain that separates, you know, the people from that, is that was ripped like in 2 at the death of Christ, and that, you know, a new covenant began at that point. So I started taking that seriously. I think between that second part of my junior year and when I graduated high school, I read all of the Gospels 4 times. I read through all of the epistles at least once, and some of Paul's I did 2 or 3 times. And then I worked through the Old Testament, the first, you know, the 5 books of law, I did a few times, and then Psalms, Song of Solomon. I don't think I ever made it all the way through all of the books of prophecy in the Old Testament, but everything else I've read several times over. Anyways, go to college. I guess the other thing too is there's an extent to which this relationship with Christ became a stand-in for what seemed like a lot of social alienation. It's like, there is this person who's perfect, cared about me, who died for me so that I would have a better life.
And Scott, can I ask?
Yeah.
In that time, that relationship with Jesus, did that feel real?
Yes. Yeah. Very 100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, it was 100% real. Like it kind of like was the thing that kind of kept me going. I think I still had some depression issues. I would probably look back and say that's just to like.
Well, so and like I'm just curious from my own experience that like so what did that feel like, or like what was it like to have a personal relationship with Jesus?
It was a source of meaning in my life that I didn't have from other things. And I think a lot of that's because my father didn't want to spend a lot of time with me actually teaching me much of anything. His idea was he was spending a lot of money on like a private Christian school. And so the teachers there were supposed to be filling in the role he was supposed to be playing as a father. And the teachers there, I mean, and I think they picked up on that. Some of them actually tried to step in and kind of do that work, but it's also like, you know, you have so many students, you can't really do that. That's a role of a father. And so it seemed like, to me, it felt good because it's like, okay, someone cares enough. Because my father should have really been taking that role, and that kind of ended up being something of a role, but it's like, I'm also having to navigate this through like prayer and reading the Bible and trying to, you know, relativize this to my own personal experience at the time that I'm living. It felt good though. Like I said, I had a little bit of depression issues, but I look back now and I think that was just a result of not being as active as I should have been. Football kind of helped keep some of the physical aspects of things going, but it's like, you know, I wasn't really thinking about taking care of my health or being physically active. It's just, you know, I wasn't raised to take care of myself. It's something that I had all of these external forces kind of enforcing upon me. You know, it's externalized discipline as opposed to internalized discipline. My parents kind of, so I graduate high school. I go off to college, still kind of very much believing in God and religion, but I don't really have much of a goal post high school. Like there was this artificial structure of school that was in place, and there wasn't, the way I look at it, there was no internal motivation that was driving me towards anything other than like, I know I loved God and that Christianity was important. I didn't want people to go to hell. So I'd kind of talk about these things, but I was very undisciplined. And my parents,
and what did you study in college? What was your major?
Well, I mean, no, that's the thing is that I didn't even know why I was there. Like my parents were just kind of pushing me towards this whole thing. Well, you got to go to college. You got to go do this. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? Just to get something. And it's like, well, I don't, you know, it's there wasn't like.
Wait, what college do you go to real quick?
I went to Troy, which is in Troy State. It's in Troy, Alabama. It's a very rural, like, I mean, it's probably more developed now, but it's typically like, it's like a gas station stop on your way to the beach in Alabama. It's not, it's a very small area. We could go check it out at some point if y'all want to, but it's, I have not really been back there since I went to college. I mean,
what's their best like program? Do they have a specialty?
Dude, I don't even know. Like, I did not care that much. Like, look, my second semester
should I look
of college,
it up right now?
yeah.
Me and Mickey both went to Tulane, so for us it's like a big deal. What
academic
college
pedigree, you know? That's all.
Well, I mean, like to kind of give you guys an idea of where
Hold
I was.
up. I love this Google. The first thing that shows up, and I do Google SEO shit. Best in the Southeast. That's what they say. That's their tagline. So
best.
That's great.
I don't know
so Scroggins, thanks for you in college you went to college, but you weren't quite sure why you were there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I didn't have any internal, you know, that's kind of the thing, is I didn't have like an internal drive for anything. Everything was like an externalized, other than like my, you know, Christian faith, which I think was actually like something that actually like was legitimately something arising from inside of myself. I didn't have a desire for anything else, honestly. So I just played video games my second semester and failed out. I remember coming back home after that. My father was very irritated because of all the money he spent. He's like, "You're gonna go do these things," and I was like, "I don't really want to." And ended up getting a job at a Smoothie King in Birmingham, and then moved back home. And then started trying to figure stuff out. I got involved with a church there, which was just getting started. It was meeting in a high school auditorium.
Hold up real quick. Can I make just one interlude? Scroggins, apparently it's a 35 to 65 male-female ratio. You should have been getting laid, apparently.
I was religious, man. It's like that's not acceptable.
Wasn't
like I said,
option.
I wasn't in good shape, and I wasn't taking care of myself, dude. I smelled and looked horrible. Like, I mean,
such is life.
Yeah.
Well, so and then like and Scroggins, not to, I mean, but I think that is an interesting point for Christianity teaches that we shouldn't fornicate, right?
Yeah.
But like a lot of people go to college specifically for that goal.
Yeah.
So what was in your mind in that time? I mean, I for me, that was a struggle as well. I was not Christian, but being in college, it was just the vibe. And really just being a young person in America was so confusing. What for you at that time, being in college, was that did I mean, like really did your Christian faith just completely obliterate your sexual urge, or were there other factors at play?
Hey, I was addicted to porn back then. I'm not gonna lie about that. But
same here.
But I mean, like, but the thing is too, is it's also, if you want to hear something really fucked up, my parents, you know, we had a you know, a sex talk and all that stuff at our school, and they went through that, and it was mostly just like, well, here's the biology. This is what a pussy looks like. They didn't say pussy, obviously, but like, here's a vagina, there's the uterus. Women have a cycle. Here's a penis. It gets hard. I remember we had a coach. This was so great. He had been like the PE coach, and he did it for all of elementary school, but you get to 5th and 6th grade, and then he suddenly had to do the sex talk. He was an interesting guy too.
I had a very funny one of those too. Yeah.
But he had been like a wrestling coach in like college, but he ended up like in elementary school. He did he ended up being like an elementary, like, you know, school coach for like, I guess, like kind of his later years. Interesting guy too. He actually went to the Soviet Union after it fell in the early 90s, and like got involved with some of the churches that were springing up there. So he came back with the famous hat, and he would tell us stories about that. But his sex ed class was so funny because he was very obviously awkward about the whole thing. So he'd get the text, and he was normally this very cool, calm, collected, mellow dude. But we do the sex talk stuff, and he's just speeding through it as fast as he can, just like getting through it. It's like you'd have a question, and he just would ignore you, and he'd just like get through it as quickly as possible. Any questions? All right, good. People would raise their hands, and he'd be like, "We're not talking about it." Bye.
Nope.
But yeah. So I mean, there was internet pornography had become a thing at that point and sprung up, and
So Scroggins, and
What is this,
and
2000,
maybe,
2011,
I should let you-
2007?
no. This is 2002 and 2003.
And
Oh,
Scroggins,
wow.
I mean, I should let you go on with your story, but I'm just interested in this in the conflict of young Christian minds. So for you, having sex with women was not something that you should do based on your Christianity, but porn was okay, or was that just a matter of just
No.
shame?
I felt horribly guilty about that, but it's also, the thing is, you're just like you're a 20-something dude. You're just raging with testosterone and horniness. And it's just like, this is a way of getting it taken care of. I felt terrible every fucking time. I was like, I'm a horrible piece of shit for doing this, but it's also just like, it was hard to say no.
This is probably a whole different side contract, or sides, like, yeah, shame of like masturbating. And this is maybe why I'm a little weird too, but like, I always thought of it as a very functional way to just get through
Because also
I want to go on to something about this.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
Scroggins, can I
Go ahead.
pass it back to you? But just make this point. You feel that you're doing a favor to your fellow young women, right? By like you like don't want to make yourself a like problem for the women. So you're like making some sort of sacrifice by like deleting your sex drive. Do you all feel that?
No, it wasn't so much that. To me, it was just like you're not. It's not that. It's just like you're sinning against God. Like, I think the thing is, if women at that time, if like there were some women, it's like if they had gone somewhere, I think I would have jumped on the opportunity and then just felt terrible afterwards. Is probably what I would have done, honestly, looking at it in retrospect. But it's just, I was hideous and disgusting. Like 300 pounds, didn't bathe properly or take care of myself well enough. Like, I look back, I'm like, there's a reason people didn't fuck me, and I don't have anything against anyone. Now here's the thing. Still intense guilt, because religious community, don't have sex until you're married. Like, that was beat into me. I know that's how it was. But part of the reason
did you beat it into yourself too?
No, there was when I hit puberty and I was getting into my early teens, my parents got me this book by James Dobson. And he actually support not porn use, but he supports masturbating as a way to keep you from having sex before marriage. There's this old Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry bit from SNL in the mid 90s. We used to love joking about when I was in junior high and high school. And it was they're like these cheerleaders, and they have this cheer they do, and it's like, sex can wait, masturbate. And so that's what I did. Anyways, getting back on point, I failed out of college my freshman year. I mean, I guess the thing is, I forgot about this too. I guess I actually started checking out different churches when I was in that latter part of my high school time. I mean, I did it in Troy too. I would go to like black churches, Pentecostal churches, Methodist churches, Catholic churches. Like, I just bounce around, because the thing to me is, it's like they're all the Christian church. You know, I had read the epistles, so you have different versions of Christianity that's actually a part of the Bible. I didn't really see this. And it's like, the other thing is, I grew up in a church where there was this kind of, it was still that era where you would have like kind of complaints amongst the different Protestant churches about different theological complaints.
Sectarial
with
battle.
each other. So the church I grew up in, it's like basically they had this idea. This might be interesting because this explains the crossover from like kind of conservative Protestant theology into like Pentecostal charismatic stuff. Is that it's I remember reading about this because it's like I didn't really understand, like, okay, why are we saying that God does not do miracles now? Because it's like it would be weird, like the church I grew up with, their whole thing is God doesn't do miracles now, and it's like our whole faith is based on someone dying and coming back to life. But they're like, miracles are ridiculous, though. And it's like, I mean, how can you call yourself a Christian and then say that God does not do miraculous things? And then it was like, okay, well, we have this idea of dispensationalism, which there's these different eras of like kind of the Christian church. I don't think this Catholicism do this will then formed Protestant church. They basically have this idea that just basically at a certain point, God stopped doing miraculous things and they don't happen anymore. Which just didn't make sense to me. It's like they have some verses they reference, but they're just so taken out of context to make this argument that I just dismissed it. And that's kind of when I started crossing over to this kind of Pentecostal charismatic Rubicon, where my church was very much against that.
It's out. Sorry, real quick. Is that the age of myth? Is the age of myth dying? Is in those people's minds? It's like God is just a myth.
No, it's not that they think God's a myth. It's just they just think that there's no more miraculous things that happen at a certain point.
And you're saying, because I don't know any of this. I mean, I have to say, from the Catholic perspective, there's a lot of miracles that have happened for a long time, and like serious miracles, like Our Lady of Guadalupe, and the miracle of the Sun, Our Lady of Guadalupe, all sorts of cool stuff. But let's knock it off on that.
Missouri, we just had a myth that's still getting debated in the diocese or whatever now, is that we have this lady whose body has been preserved for like 50 years, and she seemingly has not decayed at all. And, it was like reviewed, and it went all the way up to the highest office to review the evidence. And so they sent out their miracle investigators. So it's still a thing, and I'm glad. I'm sure this old black woman who is apparently a part of some ancient, it's hopefully it's a real miracle. But
so you had a transition about this time in your narrative, right? From Presbyterianism to Pentecostalism, right?
Yeah, well, that's actually interesting too, because it's like I got involved with this church, which was a church plant. The funny thing is, you're in Colorado, obviously. This guy is related to a Pentecostal church. He was a part of the staff there in Baton Rouge, and then he basically apprenticed under Ted Haggard at New Life Church. Yeah, it gets interesting.
That was one of the bad ones, right?
Well, it's the one who's like very like, no, you can't be gay, don't be gay, whatever. And then later we find out he's smoking meth and fucking gay hookers in Colorado Springs.
Woo-wee.
That's where I grew up, and that was a major influence on my my perspective on Christianity. Yeah.
So I'm a part of this church plant. They actually have, you might have heard about this, Will. They have like a ministry training program, and since that was like Christianity was the only thing I had any kind of internal motivation for it. I mean, I guess like I had internal motivation for video games and eating food, but that's just pleasure stuff. This is like the only thing that had any kind of substance in my life. Because I think I incorporated or inculcated ideas about what is it? So there's a passage in scripture that gets misquoted a lot, and the misquote is, money is the root of all evil. And the passage is actually the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. So I had issues with being motivated towards making money. I think I had kind of a proto-socialist view on the whole thing that I somehow got from like a conservative environment. But, I was like, well, I guess I should go be a pastor. And this church that I started getting involved with, where they actually had the thing where the pastor gets up and he does the I'm anointed thing, and I'm going to come lay hands on you, and then you're going to believe, and then you're going to speak in tongues.
So
had,
Scroggins, I'm sorry. I think in our narrative, I don't have very well filled out how. So at this point in what you're saying, you had transitioned to Pentecostalism, right?
I mean, I think it's like I'm in a church and they're kind of they have a persuasion that way, and that's kind of how I end up.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
So, I mean, and they're not snake handling or anything crazy like that. They're just like, well, we speak in tongues. And I was like, well, I mean, it's in the Bible, it's in Acts. I knew all the background on this stuff. I'm surrounded by a lot of Christians who are getting exposed to this for the first time. They're like, I guess that's a thing. And I'm like, no, it is a thing. It's in the Bible. I've read it.
Did they ever try to handle your snake?
We'll get to that. So we do a thing. I tried to get it, or I got involved in like they had like a high school ministry, and I just kind of helped out with that a little bit. And I was like, maybe I want to try to go do this. So I signed up and did they call it a ministry training school. And this is actually, it was based on a program that New Life did. Well, you might have heard about this because they had a news story related to this ministry training program that Colorado had, where they so one of the things they do is they call it missions training. Oh my God. I need to have some of these people on who don't really believe in this stuff anymore. Now we need to talk about missions training, because this shit was fucking wild.
Yeah.
So as part of this this program, you would not live at home. The church actually recommended that you leave the state. Like, they wanted you to go to like New Life, and they wanted the New Life students to kind of come to Alabama. So you'd live with like basically a host family. You don't live with your parents. And it's like $4,500 a year or something like that. And then you just work as an intern at the church. You help set things up, yada yada. And then they give you like, accredited church training. This is kind of when I think things kind of started falling apart for me, because it's like I can't. Well, I mean, it's because it's like, look, here's the thing. It's like, what I realized about this church is that they're very focused on the business side of this. And I started realizing that our head pastor, because he would actually come in and teach us directly stuff. And I've had this like kind of Christian upbringing where I've had like real Bible classes, and he's never actually been to like a divinity school or anything like that. And he has like, he had something of it, but it's like, it was not kind of to the quality that I was raised with. So he starts saying things about the character of Jesus in the Bible. And I'm like, this is going to sell better, and it's going to market better to a larger audience. But this is not consistent with the character of Jesus Christ in the Bible. He'd say something, and I'd be like, here's 5 passages. I didn't say this out loud, but it's like, I just knew this. I'm like, here's 5 passages that contradict what you're saying. And so it's like, I started getting wise to the game of like, oh, you're trying to sell this more than you're actually trying to be consistent with what's internally within what the Bible actually says.
How was the character of Jesus that he was trying to sell different than the character of Jesus in the Bible?
You could probably actually go look up this stuff, because they have like a website where they have like all the history of the sermons, which, by the way, he basically, and he even said this as part of this training school, is it's like he has basically like 5 or 6 different basically kind of series that he does, and then he just kind of puts a different face on him every time, but it's kind of always the same thing. And I'm like, oh, it is kind of the same thing. And I'm in here for a few years, so I'm starting to see this. But he had one, and it was like the character of Jesus, and he just said, he's like, well, Jesus is always smiling and telling jokes, and like he was just a positive guy to be around. And I'm like, except when he's beating up bankers and he's telling people that they're horrible sinners and they need to repent so that they don't go to hell. And I mean, it's just like I'm looking at this stuff and I'm like, no, it's like he's also described as and he was like, he's attractive. And it's like there's literally a passage, I think in one of the books of prophecy, where they describe his face, and it's like, oh no, he's actually kind of average looking. He's not some supermodel. It's not that he didn't. I don't think that he's with a humorless individual, but it doesn't seem like, he's not being a stand-up comic to get people to like him. He's also fine with saying things that actually have people leave, because there's multiple times in the Gospels where he's talking about something and it pisses people the fuck off and they peace out, and he's like, good.
Oh yeah,
I think wait, hold up. I think we've already agreed in previous episodes that Jesus was like an emo nihilistic goth who was like kind of just like kind of an alt babe, he was a ContraPoints type of guy.
Okay, so Mickey, I mean, like I think it's a cute thing to. I think that the word nihilistic is now like a meaningless thing and just something that we just say for fun. But Jesus was anything but a nihilist.
Yeah, I would say if anything, Jesus
right?
is not a nihilist.
So I was exaggerating.
Yeah. Okay.
But like emo. I mean, I can see what you're saying there, and like one thing that the little Catholic plug here, Book of John 6:66, like chapter 6:66. That's probably a like accident, because the notations of the verses came much later, but John 6:66 is when Jesus says like you need to eat my flesh to gain everlasting life, and like many people couldn't deal with this, couldn't deal with him saying this, and like many people left, and then Jesus asked his like core people, are you going to leave too? And Peter says like, where would we go, Lord? You have the words of eternal life. So like, I mean,
that's metal. That's hardcore. I get it.
Yeah, hardcore. That's hardcore word. Yeah.
I will say one thing.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. I was gonna swing back to the original like thought though, because I do want to highlight these strange, Christian university programs that then like tried to like shell out fake credentials. It totally aligns with like the ITT Tech, the Rankin College. It's just like it was this movement by right-wing people saying like, this is our first way to like say fuck you to the liberal university institutions, and it somehow extended into epistemology or whatever. It's like you don't have a thorough understanding from the seminary, so you're not prepared to go speak against all sorts of like different heretics. Like now you're just like becoming a heretic yourself because it makes money, because that's the model that's been like so profit driven and proven.
Yeah.
And they already, because like all of the right-wing Christians were the ones that were doing these like for-profit colleges that weren't credentialed with fake fucking professors. Yeah. And then they extended it to the fucking teaching of the Bible. It was just like they ate their own fucking pudding,
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a ridiculous program. So missions training is fun because they don't tell you this, but they have it set up for all of the upperclassmen because it was a 3-year program, and you'd be part of teams that had a tiered authority structure. So missions training is fun because it's a bunch of like fake mock scenarios you get kidnapped in the middle of the night. So at like midnight, they come in, your cadre shows up in your room at your host family's house. They blindfold you, take you to a van.
What the
And
fuck?
then
You had to experience this, Scroggins?
yeah, hold on, it gets funner. Let me explain all of this. Okay, so they kidnap you. They take you to like a storage unit, and then the pastor who's like basically in charge of this is like, you all show up there, they take your blindfold off, and you're like, all right, guys, we're doing missions training. And then he's like, we're gonna do a bunch of scenarios. You need to basically you're gonna have to play along with this, and we're gonna do stuff to basically prepare you for going overseas.
Wait, what? Like, okay, so,
yeah, hold on.
So this is training for like when you go out on mission, like what some like unbelievers
overseas
might do to you.
The Jesuits aren't even this crazy. This is
no. Listen. Let me go into this. So they basically they'll take you places. There was one point where they're like, oh, the truck, the van we're in, it broke down. So we had to basically like push it around the church parking lot because they're like, you might have to do this out there so you don't die somewhere. And they just put the van in neutral, and you just do that until they're like, okay, that's good enough. They took us into the woods at one point late at night. Others, sleep deprivation was a part of this, like hot and cold exposure. They simulated a situation where we were in Africa and the tribe gave us a goat. So they gave us a live goat, and then we had to string the thing up and slit its throat and then clean it and take all the meat off of it and then like cook it and then eat it ourselves because we're disrespectful if we don't. I'm dead serious. I fucking did this. There's
this
like
is great training, honestly. I feel like this is good life skills. Honestly.
Some of it kind of makes sense, but some of it's just like there's a guy I know who was in the program who's like actually a pastor now. He's interesting, but not a bad dude. But he's trash talked it in the past. I mean, I don't know. He made the point. It's like there's a guy, I forget the guy's name, but he's from a New Life dude. Well, he actually let me explain what happens at the end. At the end, basically, you do a scenario where you're telling the gospel in like a Muslim nation or something, and they catch you, and that's illegal, so they execute you. So they have people show up with like AKs that aren't loaded, obviously, and they're like, "Do you deny Christ?" And then you say no, and then they kill you.
That's so fucking awesome. Actually.
Damn.
Well, that's good life lessons.
But can I just say is this? I feel like most of American like liberal and influence universities in this time are selling some sort of LARP. Like if we can all agree on like what the definition of
this
LARP
is definitely
is.
a LARP.
Yeah, that you're live action role playing. So
yeah.
What the university that me and Mickey went to is just like you are a philosopher, you're an archaeologist, you're a women's rights person, like you're a like all these things, and then you get out in the world and it turns out that like that was an entire waste of money and like no one cares about you, you know. So it sounds to me like this Christian university, what I would point out as a Christian, wasn't training you very much about like how to help the poor, or like what do you do on the American streets about somebody who's like ODing on fentanyl, or just like they're selling you the idea of being a Christian martyr, and did they really like prepare you very? It sounds to me, Scroggins,
the only thing
like you were turned off by these things.
Well, hold on a second. The thing I'll say is that it's the fentanyl thing. There wasn't a fentanyl crisis when this was going on. This is 2004, 2005.
But my point there is just like, if these people are training you to be Christian and like spread the gospel. It seems to me like what they're doing is setting up situations in which a young person would feel that they are doing something when actually what's happening is they're being sold something.
Yeah, I mean that's a very accurate way of describing it. And that's my thing is I think my Presbyterian upbringing with the pastor who's like, go read the Bible, and I did that, and I took that seriously. I suddenly get involved in this program where like the pastoral leadership stuff, it's like, oh, you're contradicting the Bible constantly. It's like it kind of undermined with me the ability for me to take it seriously. It's funny too, because I was also so directionless that I was like, I need to do this in order to like have a direction. But simultaneously was losing faith in it. And the way the program worked is that they had to basically ask you back in order for you to make it through. And I think they just picked up on the fact that I was going to be a problem because I started seeing all these issues with it. And it's like when I had an issue, like as opposed to just being a good little automaton and going along with it, I spoke my mind, which led to other people then having questions. So at the end of my first year, I was one of the few people who wanted to come back who was not allowed back. And I was depressed about it for like a week or two. But then at that point, it's like I just kind of suddenly got interested in film. And then that's actually when I kind of got into the film stuff, Will. It was like in 2005, I started reading up a lot about stuff and looking at the art house. I had a little bit of an exposure in high school, but it kind of started to grow a little bit. But yeah.
And Scroggins, I mean, that's the point on which you and I have a common thing that we'll go off on in other episodes. But right around this time was when you read the God Delusion.
No, this is actually this is probably, I got disillusioned with the church at that point. I actually, the funny thing is I had I went back to work at Smoothie King after this because I didn't really have a job when I was doing this intern stuff with the church. So I go back to work at Smoothie King. I got a job working at what is it? Express oil change for a few months because I didn't understand enough about cars. And I was like, maybe I'll learn something this way. And I did, but it wasn't a good fit. And then moved on to a warehouse, got involved. Went back to Smoothie King, and then there was a guy who had just moved up from Florida who was like a reformed theology guy. And so that kind of pulled me back. I'm still good friends with that guy, by the way. He's married and has kids now, and he's living in Florida, but we still touch base occasionally. Really good dude. I'm really glad that I ended up with him. Got involved with some kind of smaller Bible studies around stuff, but I was and we'd kind of have these theological debates where it's like he would be basically like a dispensationalist, and I'd be like, this doesn't really make sense though. And his whole thing is it's like, well, this is what the church authorities are saying, and I'm like, I get that, but they're not really using logic for their perspective. Like I was like, look at the passages they're using. This is clearly taken out of context. But then he'd come back, well, he's like, well, you have these things about, I think we had like the free will, debate that kind of is like the kind of common Christian thing around these things, particularly with the Calvinists. So we talk about stuff like that. So this is about a few months after this, I meet this guy, start becoming good friends with him. And he's also like into like the hardcore / metal scene with the Christian underground, which there are some really, I don't know if you guys have ever looked at that, but like the Solid State Society and the Tooth and Nail Records stuff. They're actually like legitimate, like death metal bands that are like Christian that actually like make good music, which I had been a fan of. So we kind of bonded over that. And then I guess around 2006, 2007, because I didn't like that church anymore, but I still had some tangential relationships. It's around 2007, I guess, 2006, 2007. I'm working, starting to look at going back to school. That's around the time the God Delusion is picked up. Bill Maher released his Religulous movie. I remember watching that with some old high school buddies.
Yeah,
I watched Religulous with some old high school buddies. We just got together and did that. I was like, yeah, there's kind of some interesting stuff here. And then a few months around then, I picked up the God Delusion. And then around, I guess 2007 was when I was just like, and it's like, I slipped into denialism with that, but basically I was like started having my doubts about this whole thing. And as I kind of inched towards that and started having questions that couldn't be adequately answered, that's when I started moving towards agnosticism, atheism. And I guess by 2008, I had just like rejected Christianity, wasn't going to churches or anything like that. And it's also the thing is like that was kind of the Christianity. I guess if it's not clear at this point, but it's like that was kind of the thing that gave my life any sense of structure and meaning. So it's like I'm moving towards this, and I didn't realize this at the time, but it's like that was the thing that had kind of been holding the whole ship together. So I'm moving towards this rejection of Christianity, and at the same time, I've never lived without it. So, at the time, I would have described it as like once I kind of realized I was rejecting God, as like, oh, I'm being born again. That's kind of it was born again into atheism. It's like I'm rejecting this, and I'm rejecting a former life and embracing something different and a different worldview. But I guess I didn't understand the value of the kind of Christian mindset at the time. So I didn't. It in some ways liberated me, and I think in other ways put me in like a very bad state.
So, man, for our let's get to the very bad state. But for our listeners who don't know what the God delusion is, can you explain what that is?
Richard Dawkins wrote a book where he basically goes through kind of like why like these religious ideas within like a Judeo-Christian perspective. I'd say primarily Christian perspective, why like it just doesn't make sense. The thing that got me, because I remember kind of looking at parts of it, and there were points he made where I think a lot of people would be like, well, that's convincing, but I had kind of already been aware of it. And so I like kind of actually, he said stuff and I'd be like, oh, whatever. Like, that's not actually a good point. But what he actually got me on is the, have you ever heard of Pascal's wager?
Yep.
So he takes Pascal's wager and he reverses it in there. Pascal's wager
okay,
for
so how I understand.
Yeah, let me explain that.
Pascal's wager, or like, first of all, Pascal's wager is that like, if I believe in God in my lifetime, then it'll give me hope and give me meaning. And if I die and there is no God, then there's no problem. And if I die and there is a God, then I believed in God, so I'm good. Right?
Yeah, so that's what
like, Pascal's wager is.
Kind of like it's basically like you're better off living a life. It's like the point is it's something like that. It's basically the Christian life is a good life. So does God exist? Does God not exist? Okay, say God doesn't exist. You live a Christian life. It's a fulfilling life. So you die. God doesn't exist. You live a fulfilling life regardless of that. Okay. The other side is you live a fulfilling life. You believe in God. You die. God exists. You live a fulfilling life, and then you basically get to experience the fruits of that lifestyle through life in heaven as opposed to going to hell. But the reverse of it is basically he makes the point is that, okay, you live this life. You forgo so many things as a Christian. Or in this religious lifestyle. So you miss out on things, and then you get to the end, and there is a God. Okay, well, you fucked up and you go to hell. But if you do that, you forgo all these things that you kind of want to do, and you forego them in this, like, for, like, basically the glory of God, but there is no God when you die. Then you forego some of the things you wanted most in life that could have been fulfilling, and you did it for nothing. So like basically it's like in the Jewish perspective, like it's like you never eat pork, even though like there's an argument for like, okay, hey, back in the time when the Jews said don't eat pork, it's like you could get trichinosis because it couldn't be cooked properly. You could die from trichinosis, so whatever. But like in the modern era, you can cook pork well. But as a Jew, you never ate pork. You die, there's no God, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Like, you could have had pork and just known what it tasted like, but you forego that for whatever. Is that really worth it? So that's the reverse of Pascal's wager. And that was really appealing to me because I knew as a Christian, there's certain things I wasn't supposed to engage in, ideas I wasn't supposed to have. I will say that
it seems like, I mean, that's a hard thing for me to hear. I mean, like Scroggins, I met you at a certain point in time, and I feel like you were kind of in the depths of. I was as well. I mean, that stuff's hard for me to hear because, like, for me, just personally, so just like the potential of eternal damnation in hell is worth the taste of pork,
Right.
or more intense than that, worse the taste of pussy, like that. That's but so that is. I mean, I think it is an interesting thing in our times. And Scroggins, I'm very interested. I don't want to. I'm interested in. So you what was it like when you gave up Christianity and went out and like tasted those things? What was that like for you, and how did that go?
Well, I mean, like the sex stuff I've never had as much of an active sex life. I think it's just because of the religious upbringing, and I just have so much baggage tied up with it. So, I mean, I don't know. It's like, I guess I finally did eventually have sex, and it was like, okay, that was, I mean, at the time, it was like, that was like an insane amount of buildup. And then it's like, oh, that was a letdown.
I bet, man. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It's gotten better since then, but it's like, it's just still, I don't have a super active sex life. I think it's just, there's just too much baggage with it. And I don't know. It's probably not even Christianity.
I had a similar experience, man. To just, I mean, not having to do with Christianity, but yeah, there's like so much buildup, and then you actually do it, and you're like, ugh, that's. I don't know about you, but then you like that didn't last very long, at least for me.
I think with me, like there was actually an aspect where it's like I think an intellectually curious person. And the churches that I was involved in, they just didn't allow a lot of free thought. And so being able to explore my intellectual curiosities, I think that was actually fulfilling to an extent. But there just wasn't still a lot of like good direction that was established. And I think the thing is you have to think about too, it's like I'm developing an identity at this point that's based on rejecting where I came from. And it's like, the thing is, that's always where you came from. You always have the past that you did. So if you're doing that, it's like there became this period where it's like I was ashamed that I had thought the way I had and lived the way I had for so long. So I would try to lie about it. And that created a lot of anxiety and problems because I wasn't okay. I felt like an idiot basically at this point. Like, I devoted my life to this. This was
how old were you?
I was 25. So even at this point, that was still the majority. Even to this point, I am 40 now. That's still the majority of my life. So I spent the majority of my life in that way of thinking and have only rejected it for 15 years. So I still have to go till I'm 50 to have lived my life half one way and half the other. So, and there were a lot of problems that were a result of that. But I think I actually started, to an extent, kind of improving myself a little bit. I thought, okay, I'll reject Christianity and then my problems go away. And it was like, well, that didn't happen. I just had new problems pop up. And I think to an extent, it allowed me to kind of realize Christianity wasn't the issue with me. It was a lot of familial issues that had to be resolved through therapy and like a better understanding of the world and how to live a life, what makes people happy and fulfilled. And that's kind of why I'm a little bit more pro religion at this point. Is it's like I think if my parents had just done a few things a little bit, like parented differently, if there were some edits, I don't think I ever would have rejected Christianity. So
Can I jump in just
Yeah.
on a little off note, I guess, or different note is I kind of want to rethink the Pascal's wager, concept. Because like to me, I feel like this is an interesting perspective of not a binary, but like a shifting shifting concept of what is a moral Christian life, because like to me, what like not believing in God and believing in God, it's like that used to be, it's like living a godly life. It's like it was very clearly you were a Christian, you're a part of a church, for the longest time that was like a way of living life. And now we have this whole like new concept of like either being a active member of a church that doesn't really embody like a gospel message, or a evangelical that doesn't attend church. They believe in a very specific thing. It's like I feel like we're moving to a point where like like choosing the godly life isn't there's not a clear path to do that anymore. It's like there's many ways and it's all been blurred and diffused, and it's like thus the idea of going back to Pascal's wager of like, it's like you might as well choose to believe in God. It's like believing in God is a personal journey, but now it's also a public journey to me. And it's like I don't feel like you can necessarily be a better person just because you believe in God anymore. Like there's a lot like the new like sort of whatever you want to call it, the agnostic approach to like society doesn't like saying. You get what I'm saying is like Pascal's wager, it's all shifted over where it's not like choosing the godly life is necessarily a good thing anymore in the public image, and there's so many hypocrites that represent Christianity now.
So I mean, Mickey, just to like kind of build off what you're saying, and Scroggins, your story for me just kind of makes me, I'm not sure if I'm gonna say this very well, but it's this idea that the character of being a Christian in our society is so, I guess, unquestioned and so entrenched that people just think in their minds just like what it is to be a Christian. And in your experience, Scroggins, people can like have schools, like anybody can just preach off the top of their head about what it means to be about Jesus and whatnot. And like what I see, and like Mickey, I hear what you're saying, or I think I do. What's lost in that, I think, is Jesus. Is who the person of Jesus is, not what I think Jesus is or who I think Jesus is this idea that there was a person, there is a person, there is a truth. There is a truth out there that is truth, that exists before us, and we must go find, rather than our perspective on truth. Or just like, well, like the thing is, Mickey, what you just said there about Pascal's wager, I think is, I mean, well said. I hear what you're saying, but like what you're talking about is lost in the confusion about what we think, what you and I think heaven and hell is, and what we think the Christian life is. There's a difference between that and whether there is actually reason for hope. Whether like the promise of heaven is a real thing, and that's a real thing, and you're living out of a point of view of hope. Whether hope is something that we just conjure for our own good feelings, or whether it's something that is actually real. I think that there's a tangible existential difference between those two outlooks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you're attaching yourself to like a mega church corporate complex that's like applying all these like high level marketing strategies, it's like it's got to be so clear. This is a bullshit fakery. This is not what it's supposed to be. And it's like
Yeah.
the more you're saying, Will, it's just like the only way you really truly find it is what I think you'll appreciate, Scroggins. It's like a libertarian commune of good souls that want to live on some land with fresh water and know we can have generations to come.
I will say this, like, the thing that's weird about it to me is, given my experience, I've obviously known a lot of Christians, and some of them, like, I mean, you know, we talked about Ted Haggard. It's like that's not someone who makes me necessarily believe that Christianity is a good thing. I just see someone who's like a faker who found out how to scam people and make a good amount of money on it. And eventually, like, you know, he got found out, whatever, and so the scam kind of ended, although he moved somewhere else and started a different church, because it's like at that point.
Wait, is that man not in jail?
No, he just moved to
Well,
the
the thing is, it's like,
Northeast.
out of curiosity, it's like, what do we think he really did that's bad? It's like he just, I mean, look, I mean, honestly, guys, like, I mean,
guess
you know,
maybe you should be able to get high on meth and fuck boys. You know, this is
yeah.
the
Well, no,
Epstein dream.
adult men. This is not he
Oh,
fucked
okay.
the guy. The guy was like 30 years old. It's like, look, I mean, yeah, that's not necessarily what Christianity promotes, but it's also like, okay, legally, I mean, yeah, they're like, prostitution's illegal. I don't think that's really that bad. It's just, it's like, you look like shit because you're standing up and saying, don't do this, but then it's like, well, you're doing it.
Wait,
So,
was he the top or the bottom though? Maybe he was feeling ashamed of himself and wanted to get
well,
fucked.
I actually want to get off onto something else.
Okay,
To me, the thing
let's
is
go to
like,
more wholesome topic.
you brought up like godliness. I don't think Ted Haggard or even that pastor who, you know, I was under the tutelage in that program are good examples of godliness, but there are people that I saw along the way, like my friend Nathan, who I talked about at Smoothie King, who we had those debates about. I think he's a godly individual. Like, he's very disciplined in the way he lives his life. He takes it seriously. He, you know, believes in Jesus Christ. He thinks there's an afterlife. He tries to live a sinless life as much as he is able to, and he addresses his issues when he has them and tries to lead his family well, take care of them. There's other people I've known throughout my time, going back from like my high school and the community I came from and the communities I experienced after that, who I would say are godly people, but they're not, their names I know personally. It's not someone who was on a stage or is even beaming anything out. Like, if you would pass them into the street and not know who they are, and it's like, I have respect for those people, and I don't totally think Christianity is utter shit, because I've seen the way that they live their lives personally. And if there's anything that actually is like a good testimony to maybe the saving power of God, it would be people like that. But they're not making money off of it. You know, it's interesting that high school I went
really
to, because
sad.
well, no, it's not sad, because the purpose of Christianity is not to make money off of being a good Christian. It may be sad that it's like that it's like people don't get to see that, but it's like, you know, there was one of my Bible teachers in high school made a comment. He was really toying with this idea when I was in school there, and he made the comment. It's like, okay, he was talking about tent making, which is this idea, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament. He did not ask really for the churches to provide any money for his care. He made tents, and then he would basically provide for himself through the creation and selling of tents in order to carry out his ministry. And that's something that I have thought about within like the Christian church since then, is that it's like, and that's kind of one of the things also that probably led to me looking at that church I got involved with that had all those kinds of issues with, is that it's like he, you know, they were serious about making money. And I saw that there were these kind of moral situations where they had to compromise, because it's like, you need people to show up and give you money or you can't pay your bills. And so you can't be honest about these things and what's in the Bible, because it's going to be unpopular. So the idea, and I saw people who actually left that church who formed these little church communities afterwards, who kind of took that idea to heart. They were programmers and carpenters and construction workers and cops and military people. And they went and they formed these little communities, and they would meet on Sundays and Saturdays for worship and reading the scriptures, but they were not asking anyone in the congregation for money. They would share resources to make sure that everyone was taken care of, but it's something, I mean, and I was kind of on my way out of Christianity, but I respect the hell out of those people for, I would say they live godly lives. And that's not that. I think that's the reason I can actually look at Christianity to any extent right now and say that there's goodness with it.
I mean, I was just gonna say earlier, but it doesn't. That sounds really awesome what those people do. That's kind of like going back to the the Romans have come. We have to go into the woods and build our own sanctuaries.
Right.
Early concepts. But I was just gonna say that like there's a weird thing in like the Protestant world. That I got a little snippet into with my family being connected to a semi-mega church, not a big mega church, just a 2 to 4K one, at its peak. But either way, it was just like they had their pastors were making, like it was like 2008, it was like 140K. So like that's probably like the top 90th percentile of income. And so it's like I think there's like kind of a max out point. If you're really, you go to the Bible college, you put your time in like a weird rural thing, you snag your suburban spot, and you're like, okay, where do I max out at? Okay, I did everything right. I'm 37 years old. I'm making 130K. I want more, And like the only way up is to do some weird like scheming and scamming,
No, I
And
mean
that's
and like I think that's a very sad. I mean that the thing is, in the Gospels, the message of the Gospels, I think is very clear, which is help the poor.
Yeah.
And what gets so confused in our day and age is I feel like our culture is so built on Christian values that we very much we lose sight of who is poor and who is rich, and we now are at the point that I feel like that the Christian value is so instilled in our culture, this idea that you take care of the poor, that people then become purposely poor because they know that they will be taken care of.
Right.
And then people, then the rich, this idea of charity in our time. I might be wrong about this, but I think this is true. In ancient language, in like Latin, so I've heard, charity and love are the same concept. Charity doesn't mean giving a donation to something. Charity means love.
Yeah.
Love is not like a very explicit word in a lot of languages too. It's like, I mean,
honestly, I think love is a weird word. I think it's my dad and I have conversations about this. Like we don't really know what love means, and it's a weird. My dad feels comfortable, yeah, but my dad growing up always, I feel him on this. I don't quite know what that word means, and I think that Scroggins, one thing that your story, man, does a great job of seeing is this. I think that Scroggins, like you're somebody who throughout your life had an honest, I think, yearning towards the goodness. I don't know what to call it, but the like inherent goodness and I guess I would say, if I'm allowed to use the word, truth in Christianity. And it seems to me that Christianity, as you were presented it in your life, it seems to me that Christianity kind of failed you. That it didn't live up to what it said it was going to be.
I'm gonna lean in real quick before I'm gonna make my critique as well. It's like goodness is also service, and like Scroggins, you still hit the bike and you serve people. It's like you're obviously like there are people that are so like I would say 80 to 90% of people are so egotistical and stuck up in American society that they couldn't even like petty themselves to serve a petty calf. No, like what I'm trying to say is like it's not humble work. It's work that fucking makes money. But like we've all been service industry people, but serving like just as a lifestyle, like reaching out to your brother and like seeing some moment when like I can help you. It's like you've always naturally been one of those people, Scroggins. It's like, and so it's inherent and like just again going back to that story of you just like being a person that was reaching out to somebody with like muscular dystrophy, like that is like there's only people that like children are fucked up at a young age, or they're really good at a young age, or they're just neutral. It's like you did a good thing at a young age that when most people are the most egotistical. The younger you are, the more egotistical you are. So man, you've lived a fucking life of like service, and that's godliness in some ways too.
I think the thing is, and I can't remember it's one of the Beatitudes, but it's, and I don't remember the blessing, but I was thinking about this in relation to myself, like in terms of who I am. And I think it's well, you might know this, but it's the passage where Jesus talks about those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Because I do not think I am a righteous person, but I think that is a motivator for me in terms of how I see the world, and it's probably what gives me the most anxiety. Probably why I can be so pissed off some of the time, particularly when I see injustices like war or the way people are being treated when it's unjustly.
Scroggins, you're an int J for sure.
Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Matthew 5:6.
So what God's telling me is I'm going to get to kill all of these horrible politicians who are
No.
Not you.
What will happen by my interpretation is like things will turn out that like actually justice is real, and so wouldn't this be better, Scroggins, that all of those politicians will just realize how shitty they are? Like, wouldn't that be better than like killing them? That they just like realize how much they suck.
I feel like the deep state was teasing us though when we almost got to see Nancy Pelosi hammered to death.
Okay, all right. I think that was my fault, you all. I shouldn't have brought it off on the thing. Scroggins, I think that this has been. I think that I mean, I don't mean to, but like I think that this has been a really good story. And totally. Just I'm interested in where you're at now, man, and where you're. I mean, you have been somebody who's been like
we're probably at 90
uniquely
minutes,
very devoted to God.
Yeah.
Sorry, what, Maggie?
I was gonna say I think we're at 90 minutes by now.
So we're almost at 2 hours, honestly. But
so give us a sweet summary. We can't go over 2, otherwise nobody will listen.
It was worth it.
No, I think it was worth it. I want to say something.
Do what you say. What you gotta say.
I will say this: it's like, I mean, right now it's the existence of God is a complicated thing. Obviously we have the Shroud episode up. I think I said in that episode that I was like 90% God doesn't exist, 10% God does, and now it's more like 70% God doesn't exist, 30% God does, or 60-40, something like that. It's like, that was a very, it moved the needle. I want to say this. Mickey.
Sorry, no. I support everybody believing what they want to believe.
I will say this, guys.
I support everybody believing in truth because it is truth.
There we go.
Okay, sorry.
I have a level of appreciation for you guys that I don't actually share with anyone else right now, because I don't normally talk about this stuff. There's people who kind of saw the transition that I'm still friends with, and they kind of get some stuff about it. But you know, for the most part, my life is, you have the people who were there for the Christian days, and then there's kind of the people who are there for the transition, like my friend Brandon and Jonathan and Devin and Andrew. Well, Andrew didn't know me in my Christian days as much, but they knew me there and they saw the change. And then no one in New Orleans really knows that I used to be this devout. I think I've said something to a few people, but most people just know me as I am now. So I feel much closer to both of you that I've been able to share this with you. And I really appreciate it, because I think I've said before, it seems like because of this, there's not a lot of continuity in my life. And this is like it's like the big part of really who I am. And so the fact that I got to share this with you guys and talk about this, it means a lot. And I think it also like gets me more excited about the journey of this. And I look forward to hearing you guys' testimonies on these things and being enlightened a little bit more as to who you guys are. I guess in terms of how I feel about Christianity right now, and just like the existence of God, I think it's a good thing. I think I've said that in one of the earlier episodes. Part of the reason I wanted to do this podcast is that, you know, living the life that I have and looking at the world and the culture, seeing how it's changed for myself personally. I think there's necessary order that religion provides. And I don't think you can, I think people should be free to live without it, but I think it's a necessity in order to maintain order within a culture. And then it's a matter of kind of just playing with the knobs a little bit to see how to make that work, okay, where you don't fall into totalitarianism, which the church is guilty of in some ways. But I'm happy to be on this intellectual social journey with both of you.
Praise God. I mean, that's how I would say it. But I mean, I have some things to say in response to some things you said, Scroggins, but I think you summed it up pretty well. I feel like we should.
Let me do my agnostic.
We should wrap it up.
First, yeah.
I love you, Will, but Mickey, that was so hilarious and perfect.
I was just gonna say everything you well, no. What you drive me to think about Scroggins more is just like that. We are, definitely like on the edge of like, like complete like atheistic reality where there's just like fewer and fewer true like religious spiritual people. And like, I'm not talking about the last 5 decades, which I like to always talk about the Reagan decline, but I'm talking about the TikTok decline right now. We're within, we're like every month, like the attention span, the ability to like rationally think for themselves. I feel like we're at a war with the next generation. And so that's where like I think we do need religion. And I think about it as almost like a theoretical perfect Christianity that is not Catholicism, it's not Orthodox, and it's something that has to come from the acceleration to the breakdown of what we have right now. And from that, something true and pure might come. And so I'm going to be my left accelerationist for now. I have not concluded that God will save us yet. But
well, okay, so then I just have to respond to that. It's like, what that is assuming is that the truth has not existed the whole time.
But Will, the truth did exist, and it succeeded, and now it's being manipulated and twisted and taken advantage of. Like, the truth is always on trial, and the truth is constantly being retried with each generation. This next generation is going to be a big trial,
Okay, yeah, I see that. Yeah, and I think that I agree with all those things, and that that the truth we must acknowledge is something that none of us can know. No one will ever have it. So the truth exists and is there, and then our knowledge of the truth will always be imperfect and always up.
Well, yeah,
to debate.
I
so
always mistake myself because I'm not
always,
speaking personally. I'm speaking demographically. I'm
inherently
trying to always worry about the demographic.
The thing is, Mickey, I think it's so easy. I think it's so easy to say, like, well, this next generation, because they have TikTok, well, they're damned. Like they're the ones that are the problem. I think that what's way more in what's as well, a more interesting world is the world in which us and the young people are on the same journey. That's the world that I would want to be in. But Scroggins, I feel like this. I don't know if I feel like we keep. Scroggins, can you find a way to take these threads and wrap it up?
I derailed. I tangented.
I think that it's easy to talk about TikTok, and it's generally kind of interesting.
No, I actually think that if you look at it as it's like, because the way Mickey set it up is it's like you have opposing forces, which is like this kind of beautiful tradition from the past that has been basically corrupted by marketing. And now you've seen marketing basically like a corporate statist platform accelerate and destroy people's attention span to the extent that they can't engage with the living truth of the past. And that Will, you've been talking about spiritual warfare a lot, maybe like the TikTok destruction from the corporate statist WEF funded forces at war with our society. Maybe that's the incarnation of Satan in the world we have right now, and that's the enemy that we should be fighting against, and that's what this podcast is for. Because it's definitely not short-term 30-second clips. This is an entirely different thing.
We could make some TikTok cuts. They allow 3 minutes now.
Yeah, dude, hey, Mickey, you come in here, you make some shit out of this, and you destroy the enemy with I don't know, however you can compartmentalize this.
Yes, Mickey, you are a warrior.
I'll make our like the intro screen when you click the video, it's just like a hot anime girl, and then it's just us talking right afterwards.
And I talk about how bad porn addiction is. They're gonna be like, what is this?
Oh wait, I'm gonna keep listening. I'll subscribe.
All right, y'all. I hope that we can somewhere in there find a place to end the thing. But I do have to say, y'all, I really have to pee. Can we like?
I think I think it's wrapped up, dude. Everyone, so. I will take charge of this because we need someone to just wrap it up. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for everyone. Obviously, I've been talking to Will and Mickey here, but for everyone who listened, I really appreciate you. Thank you for going on this journey, in particular with me, since this is my testimony. I hope it was fulfilling in good ways to you, and stay on, or get on and stay on the path of righteousness, because it's the most important thing that our nation and culture needs right now.
Yes!
Fights for righteousness!
righteousness.
I'll never surrender. No more fear.